our distinguished speakers who are taking part today in this, from my point of view, very important discussion. Today it's Ambassador Elchin Amirбеков, advisor to the first Vice President of Azerbaijan, Dr. Professor Mithat Zadikpala, good evening. Mr. Rичард Гирагосян from Regional Studies Center, European Parliament member Ms. Rasa Juknevacheni, Mr. David Kramer, and Ambassador Gigi Gigadze, former Deputy Foreign Minister of Georgia. And we will start today, of course, from opening remarks section. And in the first half, I would ask speakers from all of three South Caucasus countries to talk a bit about what's going on in their countries, for Armenia and Azerbaijan, of course, in the aftermath of the Karabakh War. And in Georgia, we all know that Georgia is experiencing some issues at the moment. And I would ask our distinguished guests from European Union, Turkey, and the United States to give their brief positions on what's going on regionally, and maybe in Georgia specifically, because for us, in Georgia, it's very, very important. And of course, in the second half, I would ask to evaluate how each of our speakers see the future of the region and whether formats that were started a few months ago have some future and can be implemented. And I would start today with Mr. Rичард Гирагосян. The previous time we started with Ambassador Farid Shafif. This time we would start with Mr. Rичард Гирагосян, and I would ask please to evaluate briefly what's going on in Armenia. How do you see the future of the country, considering maybe recent? I think that everyone heard the interview of former President Robert Kocharyan yesterday. It was an interview for Russian First TV channel, and he was called there as the future ruler of Armenia. So I think we're very interested. Is he going to be the future ruler of Armenia, and which developments we should wait? Mr. Rичард Гирагосян.
Well, thank you very much, Igor. Good morning and good afternoon. Looking from Armenia and beginning from Armenia, the post-war situation has brought unexpected, unprecedented challenges to Armenia. First of all, an unprecedented loss in the war. And the first casualty from the war has been the demise of Armenia's myth of invincibility. At the same time, the Armenian government has done far too little to prepare the society for the scale and severity of the loss. This also resulted in an unforeseen geopolitical shift with a unilateral Russian deployment of military peacekeepers. And we also see for Armenia, we are still in a state of denial, a failure to adapt and adopt a new diplomatic strategy and a posture reflecting the new reality. This failure to adapt and adopt a new policy is largely driven by a lingering state of war. The failure to return all prisoners of war and civilian hostages from Azerbaijani captivity has only tended to prolong a state of war. And at the same time, it's exacerbated a pre-existing political crisis in Armenia. Nevertheless, we do see the threatened return of the former elite in Armenia, former President Robert Kocharyan, as well as other largely discredited and deeply unpopular remnants of the former corrupt authoritarian government in Armenia. Realistically, there's little chance of any return of the previous government or of Kocharyan. Nevertheless, we do have an early election scheduled for June as a prudent attempt to begin to move beyond a political crisis. Nevertheless, the Armenian government remains largely weakened and challenged. We won't be able to move forward until all the prisoners are returned and a sense of stability in terms of the post-war situation returns. Having said that, the imperative is also a return to diplomatic negotiations, because the Russian-imposed ceasefire agreement is just that, a ceasefire agreement. It is not a peace agreement. we do need the imperative to return to diplomatic negotiations to truly foster and forge post-war stability. And finally, there are two dangerous precedents from the situation today. The first is a dangerous precedent of a victory of authoritarian governments, Turkey and Azerbaijan. And second, more recklessly, a vindication of the use of force to resolve a political conflict. Both are dangerous precedents in terms of the outlook for democracy and European values. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Giragosyan. Now I'll give the floor to Ambassador Elchin Amirбеков. Good evening again, and thank you for joining. Please, developments in Azerbaijan, around Azerbaijan in the aftermath of the war, whether formats started after the war are implementing, and how do you see the future?
Good evening, Igor. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. Well, in order to start, I think that, first of all, the topic that you have proposed for this evening's discussion of the South Caucasus Dialogue platform indeed coincides and reflects very much Azerbaijan's vision of how all the countries of the region need to, ought to move forward in order to achieve long-term peace and stability. And obviously, after so many years of conflict, violence, animosity, and shattered confidence, this is not an easy road to walk, and this is certainly the one which will demand a lot of time and effort. To start with, I think all countries in the region, they just must adapt to a significantly changed new geopolitical post-war reality, and realize that dialogue and cooperation, which are based on goodwill and which would lead eventually to reconciliation, they should make up the toolbox today, and in order to build the new future for the region. Well, for Azerbaijani perspective, the war is over. Nagorno-Karabakh conflict already belongs to history. But at the same time, new opportunities have emerged, and transportation is just one among many primary opportunities, but they are not limited only to that. We share the view of some observers that euphoria around once extremely popular government of Pashinian has seriously eroded as a result of the war. And while the degree of this erosion is to be seen when we will have the outcome of the June snap parliamentary election, I think that one can feel that the alternative to the current government's declared commitment to normalize relations of Armenia with its neighbors and through building peace with Azerbaijan and embracing some new opportunities, this perspective and this scenario is the one which, to my view, will be the prevailing scenario for the public opinion in Armenia, which most probably wants to avoid falling into the same trap and would rather be guided by facts on the ground rather than, again, rely on fantasies and on some dreams or non-existing assets. With one simple goal: to avoid new disasters, new victims, and new violence. The end of the war and the subsequent documents which were signed by the leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, both in November and in January, they basically inaugurate a new era of international security in the South Caucasus. And they create an opportunity of improved relations for countries in the region. But we need to find out what are the realistic approaches which would, and what are the measures which would make the peaceful coexistence of neighbors in the region a reality. Unfortunately, almost 5 months after the war ended, we are still hearing opinions and views from Armenian side, be it from Armenia properly or from the diaspora, that lead us to conclude that not necessarily the conclusions which were expected were made there. And I think that without this, it would be difficult to put an end to so-called self-confined worldview, in which Armenian society, unfortunately, has found itself for the last quarter of a century. And it would be hard to, in that condition, to formulate real questions to get the real answers. Because if not, I think Armenian society will face a certain dead end. The way out of this dead end is seen, simply put, and I like this expression, in the reality therapy, which needs to be installed. And I think that that would include the realization and recognition that there is no alternative to peace and stability in and the coexistence of two neighbors who are basically have the history of living in peace with each other in the past, and who are, by the way, condemned to remain neighbors. One understands that, of course, we have to understand also that the wounds from both sides, are still very fresh, and confidence is still to be built. But I think this is slowly but steadily is being done. If we look at the efforts on the ground, especially those which are related to demarcation and delimitation of state frontier between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or the efforts on reopening transport links, which would, when realized, provide immediately deliverables to the whole broader region, but also to Armenia itself. Well, this is exactly what is expected from the outside community, be it in the other countries inside the region, or those who are outside the region, but who are basically watching the process from a distance. I think that the existence of the conflict as such during all this period of time was a major stumbling block. And the fact that this conflict has now been dealt with, I think, opens new opportunities. We all remember, Igor, that in late 90s, I think almost every leader in the region, be it in the South Caucasus or in the surrounding nations, they proposed different ideas which basically could be summed up as a creation of a certain stability and security pact, with the implication of all the countries in the region. And while this idea theoretically enjoyed support of many stakeholders in the region, it did not materialize because of the existence of unresolved conflict. In the first place, the conflict between two member states of the South Caucasus. And of course, for Azerbaijan at that point, it was hardly possible to envisage any kind of cooperation as long as almost 1/5 of its internationally recognized territory was under foreign illegal occupation. So I think that if we look at the proposals which were recently put forward, the one which is so-called Six Nations Platform, six-party platform, which may include some countries, 3 countries of the South Caucasus, but also Turkey, Russia, and Iran. I think this platform embeds the idea of all-encompassing regional cooperation, which would involve also Armenia, which so far has been sidelined from all regional energy and infrastructure projects due to its policy of unlawful occupation of Azerbaijan's territory. And but in order for this kind of ideas to succeed, of course, there should be certain reciprocity. We already are witnessing in the region certain formats of cooperation, a very successful one which involves Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia. There are also some corridors, south, north-south and north-west and east-west corridors, which are put in place as a result of also members, participation of the members of the region. But I think that if we look at the trilateral statement of November the 10th, it also implies the opening of transport links between the western regions of Azerbaijan through the territory of Armenia to Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. And I think that Turkey already has expressed its interest to participate in the construction of the railway. And I think that that's a good opportunity also for Armenia to participate in this kind of endeavors. Because, if we look at the deliverables, it's pretty much a win-win story because I think that in case of Armenia, it would get, among other things, access to through railroad to its two big neighbors, Russia and Iran, which eventually would increase trade in the region. And according to some estimates, for example, trade turnover, if you take just Iran and Armenia, it would increase threefold during the year. So I think that this is indeed a moment when I hope Armenia will use this opportunity not to miss an opportunity.
Thanks a lot. Ambassador Gigaz, good evening, and thank you a lot for joining us today. And Ambassador Amirбеков just mentioned very important topic that is widely discussed now in South Caucasus, in Russia, and in other countries. I mean, the format 3+3. So I would like to ask you briefly, please, 5 minutes, comment on what's going on in Georgia first, because we saw lots of reactions from the West, from partners, about recent developments, and then evaluate this format 3+3. What is Georgia?
Thank you very much. First of all, good evening. I hope you can hear me because I had some problems at the beginning while joining in. Thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm very happy to see good friends of Georgia today with us, and good friends of the organization which I'm representing today. This is the Economic Policy Research Center. Yes, as you correctly mentioned, there were several rounds of mediation by the European Union in Georgia. As you all know, we are now in a situation of political impasse, political crisis, when the majority of the oppositional parties are outside of the parliament, and there we have only one party parliament sitting, one party sitting inside. So unfortunately, both rounds of the mediation didn't result in any success, but it proved for once again that Georgia is very important for the European Union. Georgia is a very close partner of the EU, and the engagement continues very actively. You also are well aware that after the second round of mediation, there was a very concrete message coming from the European Parliament that if the situation won't change, it might compromise, or it will compromise the relations between Georgia and the European Union. So the things are quite serious, and they must be taken also quite seriously. But at the same time, I would like to underline that currently we are facing, as I see it, the beginning of the third wave of pandemic, which has affected, I think, the whole world, and especially our region as well. And it complicates the overall situation, of course. In addition to what was already, we have also quite deteriorating economic situation as well, which is directly connected with the pandemic. At the same time, and if these restrictions will stay in place, it will affect in a negative way the overall development of the country, of course, in the coming period. I would like to particularly underline that Georgia is the country which is absolutely unique, has absolutely unique standing among the Eastern Partner Initiative member states, because Georgia population, the majority of the Georgian population, has voted on several occasions and absolutely in favor of joining European Union NATO. So the majority, I mean the 84 for the EU and above 75 for the NATO. So there is absolutely clear task, the clear homework for any government in Georgia to proceed with that idea and to proceed towards joining both organizations. So we are now in a process to implement our association agreement to get in line with all EU norms and standards, and to get as closer as possible. But at the same time, as we're all well aware, Georgian territories are under occupation of the Russian occupation, and up to 20% of our territories remain in a very dire condition, where the human rights conditions are violated on a daily basis. We are witnessing the severe and gross human rights violation on both our territories, and unfortunately the situation doesn't improve. In addition to that, we are facing also the creeping annexation, which is ongoing creeping annexation when the land grabbing is taking place practically daily, and we think that it should be given the very, very high attention from everyone. Regarding to the platform, and which was mentioned as a 3+1 cooperation platform and the so-called 6-country platform, I don't really think that Georgia can be part of it, or Georgia can participate in that, in the formats where the Russia will be present, when the occupier will be the part of this idea. We are very much in favor of the close cooperation in the region. And just several days ago, we commemorated the 100th anniversary of the reoccupation of Georgia by the Soviet forces. So this period was mentioned by the previous speaker, by Mr. Amirbayev. At that time, 100 years ago, our country somehow managed to organize ourselves and to create the confederation of the South Caucasus countries. I think this idea was very interesting, and it could have succeeded when if it could have succeeded back then. But I think it's absolutely important for us to stay together, to stay alert with regard to the threats in the region, to be very much aware what is going on in the region, and to be to look for the possibilities of the peaceful resolution and peaceful settlement of the existing conflicts. Unfortunately, as you are well aware, Georgia is facing very active hybrid threats coming from the north, and by that I mean the ongoing disinformation, ongoing propaganda in Georgia, which further aggravates the reality on the ground. For the time being, I don't really see how Georgia can become part of any setup where the Russia will be the part of it, when the occupier will part of it. I think first things should come first, and first of all, the occupation and the return of the IDPs should take place, must take place, and afterwards we will be more ready to speak about the new ideas and new initiatives in the region. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador Gigada. Thank you. And now I'd ask Dr. Salipala to present the role of Turkey. Please, 5 minutes. How do you see the role of Turkey now after the Karabakh War? And how do you see it like in Georgia and maybe separately for the regional cooperation?
Okay, thank you, Igor. It's my pleasure as well to take part in this discussion. The feeling, especially after the following the latest fighting or 45 days over Nagorno-Karabakh, as Richard mentions, Turkey there is a feeling in Turkey that Turkey is on the winning side together with Azerbaijan. And there is a chance from now on to establish a new political environment in the Caucasus to make Turkey one of those centers of attraction for all those regional countries and regional actors, as it was in the case in the previous decades as well. But the environment, political environment, has changed a lot. That's true to say that what is changing is initially Turkey was a European or Western actor to change the political and strategic environment in the Caucasus in general. Now, Turkey has very close relations with Russia in different regions to resolve different issues. But on the other hand, some issues with traditional allies, especially European Union and the US, is it a factor to affect Turkey's future or the region's future is a big discussion, of course. But from this initial analysis, I have to say that Turkey invested so much in the region. And the priority has always been Azerbaijan for Turkey, and still Azerbaijan is the real partner. Therefore, Turkish authorities and Turkish public opinion feel themselves very comfortable and happy what happened in the region. Because for Turkey as well, despite the fact that we are very far from a political agreement, especially regarding the question of the status of Karabakh, there is no question for Turkey, like Azerbaijan, the issue has resolved. And then there is a chance to move forward and to look at the future of the region. And the basis is, of course, initially economic cooperation and to normalize or reconstruct the liberated areas for moving forward and to establish much more easier and understandable political and economic environment based on reciprocal interests, let me say. And with this war, of course, it has some direct effects on Turkish-Armenian relations, on Armenia's domestic issues, as well as Turkey's relations with Georgia because of its new partnerships in the region. One of those the most important barriers broken down. There is a potential to establish a kind of a win-win situation within the region, but how, means and ways are a little bit complicated. Now parties are ready. There is a kind of a truce on the table, but the diplomatic era has just started. The parties need to get together and to revise and to define the issue or the new regional order based on the new map of the Caucasus. We already have just a structure, a trilateral cooperation between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, of course. Turkey may endorse its position to invite Armenia in this equation, but this is a big question mark. How to invite Armenia in this equation and to bring Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey together. This is the most important limitation in our future in front of us. But there is a potential. We don't know whether it's a possibility to have a much more stable Armenia, especially after the upcoming elections or early elections, as Richard mentioned. But this is a priority, and this is the most important thing that we have to think twice. Of course, in the region, Turkey and Russia are acting together. This is a big discussion, but there is a competition as well, and this is an important limitation for all of us. And if Turkey manages to establish much better relations with our European partners, and of course US after those current developments, there is a role or potential for European partners together with Turkey to redefine the region. And this authoritarianism and other kind of discussions are out of this area, because what we are in need of to move forward in the current role and how to define a Turkey, a new actor, is dependent on Turkey's relations with the West and as well as Armenia. It is very important for all of us. Reconstruction is important. Peacekeeping forces and their activities in the field is very important as well. And then comes, as you mentioned, the other new lines of trade, in fact, East-West, or Ambassador Elchin Amir mentioned. The region has a potential to be part of East-West, South-East kind of trade and human actions. And then we may have a chance to move forward by taking this into account. But what is important from my perspective is there a potential to open up a new window of opportunity for a new normalization between Turkey and Armenia, between Armenia and Azerbaijan? And then the European partnership and involvement is very important from this perspective. If we can manage to attract our partners in this equation, then most probably we may discuss a potential and prospective future for all those regions. And the last word, it is not for Turkey's interest to have a new clash or a new skirmishes between the parties within the region, including all the actors. Therefore, hopefully we may move forward from this perspective in a much more peaceful way.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Selekpala. Ms. Rasa Jukchencheni, good evening again, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah.
You heard our distinguished speakers from South Caucasus countries, and could you please tell us about the role of European Union, European Parliament in Georgia and the South Caucasus? How do you see it?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for invitation. And everybody already celebrated Easter. My best wishes to have it next year. It's more open, and for those who will celebrate also, happy Easter, and for those who are not celebrating, also everything the best. So, despite that, South Caucasus is very specific and have very different countries with very different understanding of their future, with different level of democracy. I would like to say some words in the very beginning in a little bit more broader view, because from European point of view, European Union point of view, European Parliament point of view, when we are discussing situations, Belarus, Georgia, or Karabakh issue or Moldova or Ukraine, of course we see it as a part of European continent, our eastern neighborhood, which has some history already with very different history maybe with each country, but it is Europe. And it's very important to understand for everyone our destiny, maybe, of our generation, to understand that we are able to work, to do more for completion of Europe, to have as close as possible European continent, safe and secure European continent. And today, unfortunately, this part of Europe is a part of security vacuum, which is very important factor, speaking about Ukraine or South Caucasus or other countries. And when I think about the future of this our eastern neighborhood, I have in mind any new instruments to propose, and I have in mind what already worked out. It's Euro-Atlantic perspective. Since I am from Lithuania, so I don't know any other recipes for the countries to the east, for their future, and how to resolve all these problems, despite that they are different. It is time to change understanding also in European Union, in NATO. Putin will not be different. He will not change even. It will be even worse in the future with that leadership. And Russia will be different, I hope, in my lifetime, but not Putin. So Putin is opportunist, and he is doing what he is allowed to do. And when we have this area of instability, area of security vacuum, of course, in future we will have big problems as well. 2008 Bucharest summit was a big mistake was done when Georgia and Ukraine were not invited for membership action plan. And I think that Putin used already several times this mistake. And today is a time to correct such mistakes and to think seriously about NATO perspective for the countries, at least for those they are ready and they want to become part of security umbrella. In one or another level, we have to think about the steps towards this important future. EU membership is more complicated issue, but our example of Baltic states is very, very simple. First of all, we became full members of NATO. It was together, but invitation always was in front and in front. NATO membership is in front, and what we see in Western Balkans also is very important for stability. NATO membership, and then preparedness for EU membership for the future. About Turkey, only one sentence. I will not go into the details. I know very well what does it mean Turkey for Armenia and what does it mean Turkey for Azerbaijan and other countries. But Turkey is NATO member, and we have to think and we have to try to reverse the situation, which now is complicated, into positive role of Turkey to the region in the future, because I believe that Turkey is able to play a positive role in the region as well. Now, a few words on Georgia, because you asked about that, and now current situation is important to comment and to say some words on that. Georgia was, and I think still is, leader in the region for reforms, democratization of the country. And now, I will not hide, it's a lot of disappointment among my colleagues in European Parliament. Almost all friends of Georgia in European Parliament are disappointed very much. And of course, all of us, we stand behind the statement which was issued by 7 colleagues, and we support it very much. And I would like to send message to the leaders of the ruling party. Their comments were very strange. They said that it's only 7 members of parliament. It doesn't mean that European Union has the same understanding what was mentioned in that important statement. No, not at all. All of us, we are behind, and European Commission is behind, and European Council is behind that statement, including the sentence about the EU financial assistance and maybe possible suspension of further cooperation. So it's serious. It's not joke. The statement. And my last sentence about Georgia is that we saw Georgia up to now as example of more for more. But now I have concerns, and that Georgia is moving into a situation less for less. Yes, Russia is invader, occupant, as it was mentioned already. But the reality is, despite the Georgians will never be part of the formats with Russia, but Russia today in reality is playing role, is hidden but participant in that situation, and somehow in this short-term period is a winner in the situation, because I don't think that it's very often happens that the highest level European Union leader, as Charles Michel, was involved into the mediation, that it happens very often. And nobody from both sides used this opportunity. Of course, today I have even more doubts if for Bidzina Ivanishvili, Euro-Atlantic path is really a priority. And I will stop here.
Yeah, very unfortunate statement, I would say. Thanks a lot. Thank you for for joining us today. Now I would ask Mr. David Kramer from the United States briefly talk about the U.S. role in the South Caucasus, and then I'll get back to our South Caucasus speakers, and I would ask them about some specific steps, concrete steps that which could be made now to start this regional cooperation if it's possible. Mr. David Kramer, please.
Yegor, thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for letting me join a great panel. I'll be very brief because the U.S. role is almost non-existent, unfortunately. The United States doesn't have a clearly formulated policy toward the region or towards specific countries in the region. And part of that is due to the fact that the renewed fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan broke out toward the end of the Trump administration, which wasn't paying much attention to the region in the first place. And then now with the transition to the Biden administration, there are very few people in place who have been confirmed by the Senate or in other positions that are responsible for this region. I salute George Kent and the efforts that he has undertaken as the Deputy Assistant Secretary, but there's no Assistant Secretary for this region or for Europe as a whole. And there's not even a name that has been nominated yet, and that's a problem. Secretary Blinken and Wendy Sherman and Brian McEwen are the only 3 people that have been confirmed so far, and it's now April. And so the people are wondering when will the U.S. get its team in place so that there can be a U.S. role, there can be more clearly articulated policy toward the region. It is striking to me how the Minsk group played absolutely no role whatsoever last fall. The United States has been a part of the Minsk group, and we were utterly irrelevant in that process. I do applaud the efforts by the EU to try to mediate the crisis in Georgia, and it's a crisis, I would say. And the United States, aside from our ambassador on the ground, has really been absent. There was a hearing, 2 weeks ago, I believe, in the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on Georgia. But I do strongly support more U.S. engagement to try to facilitate a solution to the crisis in Georgia. Georgia is the most pro-American country in the region by far, and the United States has outsized influence that it should be exercising more. I do worry that we are missing what is happening in the broader Black Sea region. And I think we need to look at what the developments in this region through that prism, in case the people wonder, well, why should we care about Georgia or Armenia or Azerbaijan? We do have interests here. We want to see these countries succeed. There was hope, Richard talked about, with Armenia after 2018, and I think that hope has now been seriously damaged. I do realize that U.S. interests there conflict in a serious way with Mr. Putin's interests. We want to see these countries integrate more closely into the Euro-Atlantic community. But we're not trying to force them into either the EU or NATO, but Georgia clearly has made clear it wants to join both. Mr. Putin wants to see these countries not only not move in a more Euro-Atlantic direction, he wants to see these countries fail because he thinks that their failure will ensure that they will never join the Euro-Atlantic community. And so I do worry about what's happening with the involvement of other powers as well. It's a time for the United States to roll up its sleeves, to get more interested, get more involved. And I hope that as a new team gets in place in Washington, that we'll see more of that. So thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kramer. Thank you for joining. Mr. Rичард Гирагосян, could you please tell us, first of all, we discussed briefly role of Turkey, role of United States, role of Europe, which role there is for Russia at the moment? How do you see it for Armenia or regional developments? And secondly, could you please evaluate this format that Ambassador Amirбеков just mentioned in his opening remarks about 3+3? For Georgia, it's a bit tricky, and I will ask Ambassador Amirбеков later about it. But for Armenia, what is your position?
Well, first of all, I think a realistic net assessment in the post-war situation reveals that, unfortunately, Armenia is ever more firmly within a Russian orbit. And I do think that is now a serious concern, undermining sovereignty and independence of Armenia, imperiling reform and democracy going forward. The burden is up to us in Armenian civil society to begin to push back against any retreat from hard-fought democratic gains. Having said that, I do see two unique opportunities, and I am justifiably optimistic. The first opportunity is what the Europeans call connectivity. Literally, the reintegration of regional trade and transport will lift all boats. It is a win-win situation, including the normalization of relations between Armenia and Turkey. Turkey has much less justification and even less reason to keep the border closed. We need to link and broaden the reintegration of regional trade and transport to include one promising area of dialogue underway today between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia. It is a tripartite working group specifically looking at the restoration of regional trade and transport. This is the one bright Armenian and Azerbaijani area of engagement and dialogue. The second opportunity beyond connectivity is a return to diplomacy on two levels. Diplomacy in terms of returning to the Minsk Group format to transform and elevate the ceasefire agreement into a lasting, durable peace agreement. And in this context, to address the underlying issues. At the same time, there could be an opportunity to broaden the peacekeeping profile beyond simply a unilateral Russian deployment. And secondly, in terms of diplomacy, bringing back the West in terms of EU engagement in post-stability operations, post-war stability operations, and a re-engagement by the US. And this is an area where I do think Russia would be more receptive to actually having the West come in. And unfortunately, because it is based on a Russian diplomatic initiative on the ground, paying the cost and paying the price for post-war stability operations. The challenge for the EU is years of benign neglect by Washington, yes. At the same time, the mistaken approach by US policy toward the region has been looking at the South Caucasus too much as a subset of US-Russian relations, and not enough in terms of the bilateral or even regional approach. As a Democrat, I'm optimistic that once we get moving and steering the ship in a new direction, it will take time, but there is a new opportunity for US re-engagement. But it's actually European engagement that will fill the vacuum in terms of post-war stability. Therefore, I do want to close on a positive note. The opportunities inherent from a return to diplomacy and the promise of connectivity, of regional reintegration of trade and transport. For Armenia, it also overcomes our existential threat of isolation and insignificance. Nevertheless, our challenge in Armenia is much more about trying to offset a dangerous overdependence on Russia for security and all that entails for the future of democratization.
Thanks a lot. Ambassador Amirбеков, please, could you please say some words about what do you think first? You said about this 3+3 format, and yes, it's very widely discussed, but for Georgia, as Ambassador Gigada said, and as Minister of Foreign Affairs already stated, joining this format is impossible because of the occupation of Georgian territories, and whether there are some other options for some regional dialogue, and do you think it is possible, which concrete steps may be implemented now to move forward?
Well, with regard to this, your latest question, of course, any format which is proposed, it is subject to be approved by all countries on a voluntary basis. I don't think someone is talking about imposing some kind of format on anyone. And I really understand and I hear what is being said with regard to the concerns of direct participation. But at the same time, I think that other examples that I mentioned on existing formula of cooperation and interaction, they show that, again, in the presence of unresolved conflict in the past, the potential was not unleashed, and it wasn't tapped. Even half of the potential wasn't tapped. So now, as it was mentioned by other speakers, there is a unique opportunity to go forward. But in order to go forward, and I would like to insist on this point, I mean, all the countries in the region, they need to accept the new post-war reality. They have to adapt to it, and they have to show their goodwill that they are ready to go forward in this direction. I mean, there should not be any room left for any kind of revanchism, any kind of attempt to try to win some time in order to get back to this military option and so on and so forth. Now, if you allow me, and last point on this issue, I think that it was I think the openness of Georgia to regional format is there, because if we remember Georgia President Salome Zurabishvili, when she, I think, made a statement last December at the first plenary session of the Georgian Parliament, she said that it's an important, she called for a creation of a new regional format, which she dubbed as a Caucasus peace platform. So I think it's probably a matter of nuances how to arrange it. Now, with regard to some points mentioned by other colleagues and other participants on the opportunities, I agree here with our distinguished Turkish colleague that indeed the existing example of how countries can work together, it shows and it bodes well for the future. A new variable geometry could be applied, but I mean, you can always see that there is a win-win situation here. And I would say that indeed connectivity is the one which can provide to members in the region immediate deliverables. So that's why the working group, which is going on, is moving smoothly ahead. And I think that, again, this is not something which is imposed on anyone. I think everyone understands that they have to benefit from it. On the return to diplomacy, again, if we talk about the Minsk group, it is true, and we have to admit that because of absence of any tangible progress in the 28-year-old process of negotiations, and the fact that after the July outbreak, the Minsk group has almost disappeared from the radars, in spite of our repeated calls to kind of make it more visible and to try to use its potential, nothing happened. And really, if we're talking about, I mean, sincerely, the image and reputation of this institution has been largely discredited because, I mean, and in the circumstances, I mean, going back to business as usual, given this discreditation and the weakened, let's say, reputation of this institution, seems hardly convincing. But as it was mentioned during our latest contacts with the Minsk group, and I think that the co-chairman, they traveled to the region, Azerbaijan, of course, would be ready to hear and to listen to any ideas or proposals that the co-chairman can come up with. But I think that the major zone of comfort for everyone here is the fact that they should be, I mean, all these ideas and proposals should be aimed at consolidating the emerging spirit of strong peace and stability, but also post-conflict reconciliation. I think European Union also and United States and others, they have a lot of instruments in their toolboxes on how to promote, you know, stability and peace in the region now that the hostilities are ceased and you know, no people are dying. Now, with regard to the other opportunities which may be happening, I think that what is important is, of course, building confidence, and building confidence also is something which, if we talk about Armenia and Azerbaijan, it takes two to tango, as they say. I mean, the fact that I think Mr. Giragosyan, he mentioned the issue of the persons whom he qualified as POWs, but I mean, we all understand, we all know that these people don't qualify under this notion, because these people were sent 1 month after the end of the hostilities and the signature of the peace agreement in November. So, I mean, those people were sent to, you know, to sabotage the agreement, and they basically killed 5 people, including 4 military and 1 civilian person. So why I'm telling this is that we need to be sure that on the other side, there is the same understanding on the importance of building peace, rather than, you know, trying to, you know, to stall for time and to get back with some kind of revenge. So, I mean, and I think that when all parties will be convinced about this goodwill, all these talks, and I would consider them completely irrelevant and hyperbolic about differences in political systems, you know, and authoritarians winning over democracies. I mean, we have to always look into the definition. I mean, we slightly differently qualify what happened in 2018 in Armenia and the events afterwards. So basically, as we all understand, no one is perfect in terms of democracy and human rights, but it's hard to talk about respect for human rights when you talk about the country which for many decades have kept, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, you know, deprived of their homes because of the ethnic cleansing and the violation of fundamental human rights of those people. But again, in order to end on the positive note, first of all, I would like to thank Yegor for this initiative. I think the more we talk to each other, the further we advance in listening to each other, in hearing each other. And I think that when there is a will, there is a way, as they say in English. I think that, you know, on our part, by participating sincerely in all these endeavors, in order to bring us closer, not only in terms of connectivity, but also in terms of human-to-human contacts. You know, we indeed want to make sure that Armenian population, which is presently living on the territory of Azerbaijan, you know, feels itself in security, in dignity, and in good neighborly relations with Azerbaijanis. And I think that we should reject all kinds of racist theories which were proposed at some point in time about incompatibility, ethnic incompatibility between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. I don't believe in this, and I think that it's a wrong assumption. I think that Armenians and Azerbaijanis, they could, you know, restore this peaceful coexistence. But in order to do that, we need to be clear, and we need to be sincere with each other. And I think that that is what Azerbaijan is trying now to put forward on the table with the help of all our friends and neighbors and partners. That is why we would be open to any format that would enjoy the support of countries in question. The most important thing is to move forward and to seize this unique opportunity that may allow you know, to turn this geographical region into a political one day. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador Amirbekovich. Ambassador Gigadze, and please, to our distinguished guests, you can raise your hands if you have some questions or text it in chat, but better to ask it live, please. Ambassador Gigadze, could you please tell me what I'm thinking about while listening about different formats and etc. Georgia at the moment is very vulnerable due to huge political crisis in the country, economical crisis, and etc. So for Georgia, it is a period in the aftermath of the Karabakh War. Georgia is in the period when it may be actually pushed by anyone, and I don't know, the Kremlin or some other maybe forces, I don't know, may push Georgia easily because of the lack of good government, good management, one-party rule in the parliament. So how do you see the current situation in terms of entering any kind of regional cooperations or actually foreign politics, developing foreign politics, when in the country we see the chaos every day, honestly speaking?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to just reflect what already was said by the honorable representative of the European Parliament. I'm very sorry to hear that Georgia is backsliding in terms of the perception in the European Union, that Georgia is not anymore or can become less front runner in a sense in this process. It's of course very pity to hear, and if we fully understand it. I mean, in the current reality, I mean, Georgia has absolutely no choice rather than to be moving towards the European Union and NATO. I mean, there is no alternative for Georgia to slide backwards or to look backwards. I mean, there is only one very clear aim and a very clear goal for us to become members of the EU and NATO as soon as possible. And it was already raised that it was a big mistake, the NATO Bucharest summit. I just also would like to reflect on that. And I fully agree with that, because 2008 was decisive year, I think, for not only for Georgia but and the region, but for many players, because Georgia was the first country where Russia and where Mr. Putin exercised his foreign aggression for the first time. I mean, Georgia was where everything started. So that therefore, it's always for us to be always remembered as the starting point of the Russian aggression abroad, because now what we see is a totally different world. We speak about this Russian imposed new realities, which we of course do not agree with. But anyway, the starting point was the weakness shown by the West towards the clear messaging towards Russia and towards the region. It was in our understanding really very clear sign to invade and to occupy our territories. And when we're speaking right now on a regional cooperation, we should understand that Georgia exercises excellent relations with all its neighbors except of one. We have strategic partnership with Azerbaijan, we have strategic partnership with Turkey, and we have excellent relations with Armenia. So there is, I mean, only one country, only one player in the region which does not accept our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, and our wish to move forward. Of course, I fully agree with you that if the situation will not calm down in Georgia itself, it will be difficult for us to move on with what we would like to achieve. It will be very difficult to keep this status of the front runner, which we very successfully maintained for several years in a row. It was a big success, but at the same time, it was also big responsibility. And of course, any sign of falling backward is really very damaging for us. I already mentioned about the platform and about our vision of it, and we consider it as somehow regionalization of the whole issue. It was mentioned already during the first session of the same format that we would like to keep the European Union and NATO on board in everything what is happening in this area. We would like to be engaged by the European Union and NATO. Much more EU and much more NATO should be present in Georgia, from our understanding. So we don't really understand why should be this region isolated only for only this 3+3 for only 6 countries alone, and why shouldn't we be speaking together with EU and NATO? I mean, for us, the future lies within those both organizations. So therefore, we don't really see ourselves just in this closed up regional platforms on closed up regional cooperation. Cooperation is, absolutely perfect. We have a lot of projects running through Georgia. We have the transportation routes running through Georgia. We have a lot of new ideas. We have the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway. We have quite good history of the regional cooperation with all our neighboring countries. So we don't understand why to impose these new formats, why to have this closed up regional cooperation, and not to isolate the already present big players like EU and NATO. This is what I can say with regard to that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Please, again, if you want to have some questions, raise your hand, and I want to read some questions that I received, and I would address it to our guest from Turkey. What are the depths of commitment of the regional Greek powers, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, to the platform of 6, the so-called 3+3 format? And is it, in the sense, an attempt of reinstitutionalization of the new reality on the ground? So, Dr. Salikpala, could you please tell me what are the commitments of Turkey and maybe Iran and Russia, if you know, to these formats that is discussed during this session?
Okay, Igor, I would like to start to say that first of all, we have to set a new dialogue mechanisms between Armenians and Azerbaijanis for an actual resolution of the conflict. This is a must. This is a priority for not only Turkey, but for Russia and for European Union or other actors involving in this issue. And this war has made relations between the two countries even more difficult. This is another reality. And this is a responsibility for all of us to take into this account. So it's a complicated place to start the Caucasus or the resolution of all those issues. And I think what's important is both Baku and Yerevan decided it is essential to have a full normalization of relations, diplomatic relations, open borders, and so on and so forth, as Richard mentioned. And Turkey is part of this discussion, and therefore we are in need of such a kind of a whole package to move forward. And if they both decide to start negotiating, and it's a kind of a strategic goal for both of those parties, then we may move forward very quickly and to find some ways and means to resolve this issue and to create a kind of a cooperation zone. But if each side thinks it's better to live with the status quo, with a closed border, and they are not interested in relations, then I see it is a very difficult to negotiate. And for the other actors involving, we were discussing Russian role, and we were emphasizing that Russia is a threat in the region. This is a fact. And it is true to say that Russia now emphasizes that de jure Nagorno-Karabakh is a part of Azerbaijan, but de facto there is a big discussion among many people that it's now a Russian enclave. There are Russian peacekeepers there, and Russians become a kind of a security patron in the region. Not Armenians, and regional actors believe that they never go back to their homes for Russia, it's a strategic asset as well in the Caucasus, which they don't want to lose, even though they say that technically, of course, it's a part of Azerbaijan. There's a no peace, no war. And I think this might suit the Russians better than a complete peace, which will be on the argument for the Russians to leave the region. But, this is not a situation or the condition that they cannot survive. And there is a big discussion, and Armenian colleagues and Armenian people are very afraid of Turkey's involvement, but we have to accept that Turkish involvement has changed the status quo in the region. And what's important is Turkey's identity within this conflict. And there is a kind of a Turkey issue, and most probably Turkey would like to be part of this peace process and to make the region a kind of a region of peaceful resolution, but it has very directly related with Turkey's relations with the EU, Turkey's relations with Russia, and of course Turkey's relations with Iran. And what kind of a mechanisms that we are gonna have in the region? It is up to, first of all, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Then afterwards, of course, the regional actors. And as the previous speakers mentioned, already existing mechanisms are not valid in this region from then on, and they have to redefine themselves. For Turkey, of course, Turkey has some advantageous positions against Russia. This is a new phenomenon for Russia as well. Turkey was there, trade-wise or economic-wise, in a limited way, some political means, but for the first time, Turkey is a legal actor on Azerbaijani soil or the Caucasus as a military factor as well. And we know that Turkey and Russia, time to time, have some contradictory roles. As the previous speakers mentioned, Turkey is a NATO member country. Of course, we have some issues with our partner countries, but Turkey's involvement in this region, not only in the Caucasus, but in the southern flank of NATO or eastern flank of NATO, is a vital role. Therefore, NATO member countries, including Turkey, may get together and find some ways and means to normalize their relations. But on the other hand, EU is another factor. Of course, I don't think that Turkey is against any kind of an EU involvement in the region. But first of all, EU needs to think and decide how to regard Turkey, how to treat Turkey in all those issues. There are some kind of prejudices against Turkey under current circumstances. Of course, we have many different domestic issues in ourselves, and there are a couple of clashes. But in terms of what's happening in the Caucasus, and Turkeys and Azerbaijanis, and I'm sure that even Armenians have the same perspective to normalize their life in the coming future. And for EU, there is no sufficient institutional capacity and political will in the EU for the moment. The identity as a normative actor or factor is not viable and decisive in resolving those issues and setting a well-accepted balance in the Caucasus. This is the reason why we are in need of US involvement as well. But what kind of an involvement? Then we need to go to first Azerbaijan and then second Armenia and the other actors. Iran is a kind of a silent actor. I don't see very prospective actions, but if there is a kind of a need for a new actor or a new role for implementing a ceasefire, a kind of an independent monitoring mission, and kind of the signature of a final agreement, a kind of a policy of disengagement based on, we may see some other European actors. France, for example, lost their reputation in the region and their potential as well. It might be Germany, or UN-involved kind of mechanisms may be established within the region itself. And I would also like to see a role for the European Union, which did not have a political profile 30 years ago, but now I think needs to play a role in the region. This is the case. For the couple of financial economic prospects, as you mentioned initially, yes, there are some prospects to move forward, such as new transport corridors through southern Armenia linking Nakhchivan to mainland Azerbaijan, as was mentioned in the truce, or to make the other links already established by Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, including Armenia, to move forward. But our Western partners and countries need to understand the realities of the region and to move from this point and to move forward then afterwards. But I see another window of opportunity for the European and American partners in the region to create a kind of a normalization between Turkey and Armenia. My priority, we were together with Richard a couple of times before in different meetings on this issue. I can easily say that Turkish-Armenian normalization is also important to normalize the Caucasus. How to bring those parties? And we have some partners last couple of decades to resolve this issue. But most of the time, those parties do not put their hands or roles in this equation with a positive agenda. And with those kind of negative agendas, those issues between Armenia and Turkey survive and prevailing over all those political agendas. And it creates a kind of a negativities. It's a must for a new beginning and new thinking for all of us. Of course, this is not an easy work, but work to invest. And this is very important to create a kind of a, as Ambassador Amirbekov mentioned, post-conflict reconciliation and normalization mechanisms. But as I said at the beginning of the second tour, we have to start with first Azerbaijan and Armenia, then afterwards 3+3, or I don't know, different kind of mechanisms can easily be established within the region. But again, Turkey is a factor in the region despite Russian role. And many people think that Turkey and Russia working together on the field in the Caucasus or Eastern Mediterranean or in Syria or in the Black Sea region to create a new environment. You know, both parties are competing with each other. And this competition, it's going to be much harsher than before, most probably, because Turkey, for the first time, managed to change the flow of events in the Caucasus. What kind of a Turkish role we will have, we'll see. And it depends on American and European partners' attitude towards Turkish decision makers as well. Therefore, let me stop here. But I'm sure that Turkey will engage any kind of a peaceful resolution or any kind of a mechanisms within the region. And it is almost impossible to exclude Turkey from those discussions, not just because of Azerbaijanis want to see Turkey as an active actor, but the realities of the region necessitates Turkey's constructive involvement in all those issues.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Salikova. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rичард Гирагосян. Could you please briefly comment on several issues, because we don't have already lots of time. First of all, I would ask, how do you see the elections? Do you see that Pashinian's team will win these elections? Secondly, in regard to what Dr. Salikova was saying now, and Ambassador Amirбеков as well, do you see that it's possible? I've heard in Armenia lots of people discussing, even as a propaganda tool, discussing that Turkish foreign minister is coming to Yerevan to meet Pashinian, and etc. This issue is very, very widely discussed. So do you see that some kind of more peaceful relations with Turkey could be established soon, not in some future, but like in, I don't know, months or half a year? And the elections. Could you please comment on this?
Well, let me start by following Mithat's lead in terms of focusing on the outlook for normalization between Armenia and Turkey first. I think in a general sense, Turkey no longer has a justification to deny normalizing relations in terms of simply diplomatic relations and reopening the border. This is not reconciliation we're talking about. It's much lower, but it is a foundation of normalization. I do think in the short term, it's unrealistic to expect any progress for two reasons. President Erdogan in Turkey has yet to renew the political calculus given his alliance with the nationalist MHP. And in Armenia, it's too soon. Turkey's unprecedented direct military support for Azerbaijan has tipped the scale. It is both divisive as well as decisive. And I do think it's probably too soon to expect progress. I would advocate, however, broader linkage, normalization with Turkey as part of the broader package of regional reintegration of trade and transport. In other words, Azerbaijani access to the exclave of Nakhichevan through southern Armenia, tied with the reopening of the border between Armenia and Turkey and the restoration of a rail link from Armenia to Russia. I think in this context, Georgia is in grave peril, is in danger. I do think part of Russia's motivation for moving forward on regional reintegration is an effort to isolate and marginalize Georgia. And I do think that is a real concern. Regarding political developments in Armenia, it is most likely that Pashinian and his government will secure a fresh mandate, a reduced but working majority. This is a reflection of a base of support or a plurality of support among about 30% of the population, but it's more reflective on the lack of an alternative. There is simply no alternative to Pashinian and his government. The discredited former government has no real popularity or standing, and no Armenian wants to go back to the past corruption and authoritarian government. Over the medium to long term, however, I do think Armenia can overcome this crisis domestically because we have a degree of rare legitimacy from truly free and fair elections and institutional democracy. I'm much more concerned about the outlook for stability in neighboring Azerbaijan. And President Aliyev is in a very precarious position in between Turkey and Russia. Secondly, the presence of Russian peacekeepers is not necessarily a benefit for Azerbaijan. It is a concern. And lastly, I do think the Aliyev government in Baku is facing dangerously high expectations. And I do think the domestic pressure within Azerbaijan will actually present a new challenge. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'd ask Ambassador Amirbekoff to comment both on what Mr. Rishard Giragasyan just said and Dr. Selakpala said about some kind of competing, let's say like this, competing between Russia and Turkey in the region. How do you see it from Azerbaijan, and what is Azerbaijani position on Russia's role?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to tell that from the Azerbaijani perspective, the role of Turkey in this 44-day war and in the period that preceded that war was crucial in terms of ensuring the deterrence role so that this situation which was in the region would not be influenced by any external players to the extent that could have serious implications. And of course, it's not secret that today Azerbaijan and Turkey enjoy such a high degree of brotherly and friendly relations, which could hardly be compared to any other a couple of countries in the world. And I think that what Dr. Mithat just mentioned, I think it's not only because of this that the Turkish role will be increasing, but because of the geostrategic importance of this country for a broader region. We should not limit our views only on the South Caucasus. We have to look also at the processes which are surrounding our immediate region. As far as the competing, of course, I mean, it would be naive to think that, you know, there is no competition, and it was acknowledged by Dr. Mithat. But I think that what is important is that this situational, I would say, partnership on issues which are of direct concern to both countries with a positive agenda might do a trick in terms of, bringing some positive deliverables for all the countries in the region, including to those who are today direct antagonists, to Azerbaijan and Armenia. As far as the comments by Richard are concerned, well, I would agree that basically the recent opinion polls in Armenia have shown that despite all the turmoil and I would say mess which is going on internally, I think that still the lack of alternative for the public opinion makes Pashinian already kind of a winner in advance. It's a question whether he will be able to secure the same degree of support in the parliament like he enjoys right now. That has to be seen. And then, of course, we're living in the 21st century with everything that presupposes. So you would never be too certain in anything. I would not be that worried about the precarious position, as he mentioned, to President Aliyev, because I think that the finesse with which President has dealt with this crisis, which was on in Azerbaijan and in the region, and the fact that he very much, reached the dream or the wish that was there in Azerbaijani public ever since the independence was restored, that is the restoration of territorial integrity. I think that makes him a hyper popular politician. He has enough level of credibility and a personal quality of relationship with Russia, but also with Turkey, to make sure that the interests of Azerbaijan would not be compromised at any cost. And I think that, of course, he is bringing a new agenda not only to Azerbaijan. I think that what he's now trying to say is that it's not about Azerbaijan behaving itself as a conqueror and Armenia always remaining in the position of a defeated party. No, I think that what he's trying to say is that the absence of this conflict and this I would say this operation of the surgeon to do away with this problem which was impeding all the positive processes in the entire region. Now that it's over, there are new opportunities for everyone, and the agenda which is proposed by Azerbaijan, which some call Pax Caucasia, it means that it should be a win-win story for everyone. We may start with those things which are doable. Connectivity was mentioned many times today, but I think that what is even more important is to create degree of confidence and between the peoples in the region, so that they can believe again that whatever they are promised by their leaders is doable. And from that point of view, I think that stability in all member states, if our region is a crucial element, and we very much look forward to continuing to work with all those governments which are involved in order to move this positive agenda forward. And a word about the implication of external factors. Of course, Azerbaijan would be happy to see a more visible and constructive engagement role by the United States and by the European Union. And of course, we are in constant and regular dialogue with both of these important players. It went without much notice, but one has to recall that Azerbaijan's relations with the European Union has improved in the last decade, and because of the war, I mean, the finalization of a key project on connectivity, which is the Southern Gas Corridor connecting Caspian with Mediterranean Sea, went unnoticed, but it is a huge project into which both Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, but also the external players like United States and the European Union have contributed. So we want, this kind of ambiance to continue and to cover all the rest of the players in the region. And I think that from this particular perspective, Armenia should look at this today's situation rather as a glass half full rather than a glass half empty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Amirбеков. And I would ask Mr. Kocharyan, you heard our speakers from South Caucasus countries, from Turkey. Mr. David Kramer actually said that there is no U.S. role in South Caucasus at all at the moment. Could you please tell me briefly, if possible, whether there are any two, and actually everyone also mentioned there was no role for OSCE Minsk group during the war, and actually we saw that it was like this. Could you please tell me, are there any tools for European Union to be more engaged in the region now, if you believe that it is needed?
Yes, thank you. We see from Georgia example, Georgia is part of agreement with the European Union, and European Union takes care and is involved into the processes. Of course, European Union is not a security alliance. European Union is not yet alliance which can help somehow in military actions like it happened during Nagorno-Karabakh war recently. And I don't think that European Union can do that. Of course, diplomatic efforts. Of course, I am also not happy that European Union is not able to be active enough in neighborhood. Of course, we would like to have European Union more active. But yes, Georgian example was very clear that European Union can do a lot. And of course, developments we had before, visa-free regime and support, financial support, which already has, European Union can more act on this soft power issues related with reforms, issues related with the democratization issues and other very important topics. But if in another country, like for example, Armenia was not part in 2013 when Vilnius summit, during Vilnius summit, they didn't sign the same agreement which was signed, for example, with Georgia. So this is up to countries to have European Union as close as possible to their politics or not. And today, when we see, as I call it, crisis of responsibility in Georgia, we see that it's impossible to help when political actors are not able to do themselves such important steps forward. So yes, European Union, that's why I mentioned in my first introduction, in the introductory speech, mentioned that it's very important complementary activities, NATO and EU together, especially when we speak about security issues, which are still very important in the region. So I don't know how much, for example, for Azerbaijan, European Union can help more, because Azerbaijan themselves, they have their own understanding on their future, and they are not seeking EU membership, for example. Only Georgia is on the path officially declared that the European Union for them is their goal in the future. So it's very much up to the countries. I remember, again, I will repeat from our own experience, nobody would push us towards European Union if we would not in Lithuania ourselves were not doing reforms and were not asking support from European Union. You have to have huge political will together with your societies to be part of that club. And then European Union, of course, always will come.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, we're out of time already. I wish big success to Georgia in solving the crisis as soon as possible. I also wish great success to Armenia during elections in June 20th. And thank you a lot to our guests from Azerbaijan, Turkey, European Union, and United States. We will continue this format. I think we will continue talking about specific steps made by Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, maybe with participation of Turkey in a month. And I hope that there will be some use already, like some more concrete details. Thanks a lot for joining us today.